These guys survived the David Kahn era of Timberwolves basketball and live to tell about it. It's Flagrant Howls.
We are 2 days away from the NBA trade deadline, which means sometime in the next 48 hours, Kyle Theige, Tim Conley is going to cook. And it's,
Tim Cook.
And it's going to be glorious. Yeah. I kind of want to play a game here, and we will do, because you're at the Waste Management Open this week?
Later this week, yeah. I'm headed out. Good timing by me, of course, the big planner I am, to go on a little vacation during trade deadline week, although it's been a slow trade deadline so far. But yeah, I'll be in Scottsdale this weekend for the Waste Management, and then catch the Super Bowl, and I'll be back next week.
Dude, have you been to the Waste Management Open?
I have not, but one of my best friends that we're going with has, and it's going to be an experience. Although, again, not to get super weathery, but it looks like there's a Pineapple Express, not the movie, but the weather storm coming through. So there might be some rain in the desert, which it's like, didn't sign up for that. But I've watched golf in worse scenarios. So I'm excited to check it out, throw some beer cans. And then if something does happen by Thursday, I'm sure I will forcefully call in to whatever platform you're doing and give my takes.
Well, so a few things here. Put a pin in the Waste Management Open. We'll circle back in a second. But we're going to do a random Wolf of the Week today. I know your confidence is shaken after a few straight losses here. And now it's a short week of rest for you, but we're going to do that today. On the Waste Management Open, I've never been. It's a bucket list item for me, so I will be living vicariously through your Instagram stories or whatever. I think every golf tournament should have that exact vibe. Mm-hmm. Don't worry about being quiet when players are teeing off. Like, just serve people whatever they want to be served. Don't worry about the quiet signs. Mm-hmm. Stadium vibes on all the par threes. Like, sign me up.
Wow. Okay. Live and let live. You've joined the dark side. I'm with you too. Maybe like Augusta, I would keep to still, $1.50 pimento cheese sandwiches and just
the azaleas and the babbling brooks.
The aura of golf and just being out in nature and fresh air and hearing the wilderness. It won't be spring.
Hello, friends.
Until Augusta. But I'm with you. I just having more. I mean, I golf a lot, and I have a speaker, and listen to music and stuff, just having a good time. So I'm glad that at least for the Waste Management, they kind of embrace that more. But this is not a golf podcast, but we could totally do an hour on the changes they need to make it a better viewing experience. But it starts this weekend, and it should be a pretty loaded field. And I'm excited to go. But yeah, Minnesota Timberwolves, 48 hours. Is Shake Milton going to be here when I tee off on Friday morning?
Well, I have a list of Wolves trade candidates, names that have been connected via reports in the last 3 days to the Timberwolves. But we should shout out the Minnesota Golf Show. Shameless plug here.
Oh, let's do it.
Because the Minnesota Golf Show does take place this weekend at the Minneapolis Convention Center. For those of you not flying to the desert to watch the PGA Tour, you can drive your way into Minneapolis, the convention center. It's Friday through Sunday, and specifically, Mackey and Judd and Purple Daily will be podcasting live inside the golf show on the Josh Arnold investment stage at 2 o'clock on Saturday. So if you want to come out, tickets are very reasonable. mngolfshow.com for all the information. You can check out the exhibitors and just see all sorts of information. But Saturday at 2 o'clock, come hang out with Mackey and Judd, Purple Daily, and you can sling some reckless speculation around with our drivers and pitching wedges.
That was the most natural transition we've had. I had no idea that was happening, but there's a Portland golf show out here, which won't be as fun because they won't have my two favorite podcasters there, but the golf shows are a good time to go. I know you don't have any snow on the ground. Jim Pete was pretty adamant about that last week, so I know my friends are golfing this week, and the temps are respectable, especially for February, so go check out the golf show and then get a little Purple Daily mixed in as well.
LFG. I'm just going to give you names sort of one by one and tell you where I saw these names connected to the Timberwolves. And you tell me on a 1 to 10 scale of excitement of, if this player joined the Wolves, I would be 10. Like a 10 being when they traded for Jimmy Butler the first time around before.
Yeah.
Or like when they, I think people weren't really excited when they traded for Gobert. So, like, whatever the most excited you've ever been for a Wolves transaction. For you, it was probably when they signed Kyle Anderson.
Yeah, that was something like that. Yeah. So, okay,
and a one being like when they drafted Indy Eby, and everyone's like, "What? This is the first round pick we've had in like how long?"
Well, I think when
Who's
they
this
traded
guy?
for Gobert, again, I really planned my life so smartly around these big transactions. I had threatened to move to Mexico when that happened. So that was probably my one. Again, I was wrong. Rudy Gobert has kind of changed the franchise. So, okay,
I
1
feel
to
like
10.
I talked you off that ledge on the first episode.
Yeah, thanks. I think you were the voice of reason and I was the lunatic. But yeah, let's go. I don't think I'm going to hit, just going to be honest, I don't think I'm going to hit anything above a 7 on the excitement scale. But I think there's definitely some 5s and 6s that could contribute and make this team a little better for this playoff push. So throw out a name.
Let's start with this is from John Krasinski, Associated Press. Wow. The Athletic used to be the Associated Press, but that was like 7 years ago. Dennis Schroeder.
Yeah, that one was a new one. Dane and I did a podcast last week, and we dropped a bunch of names, and Dane's as plugged in as anyone. But that was not one on our bingo card. Schroeder's kind of bounced around. Historically, one of the things I always think about with him is he turned down like a 4-year, $80 million deal with the Lakers a couple of years ago, and then ended up having to sign kind of like 1-year deals since then. But Schroeder's in Toronto. He's kind of backing up quickly now after the Raptors made their 2 big trades. But he would be good. I mean, he's a proven guy. You saw what he did for Germany in FIBA just last fall. Again, Olympic basketball or international basketball is a little different, but he can take big shots. He can play really good defense. I don't know if he is the type of locker room presence that would be open to maybe from playoff game to playoff game catching DNPs, which I think at times if Mike is playing really well and you got Nikhil in there and maybe 5 minutes of Jordan McLaughlin that you wouldn't need him, but it's an exciting name. I'm not exactly sure what his contract status is, if he's in the last year of his deal, but he's a good player that would give them some spacing, some playmaking, and then would be another defensive cog that wouldn't, create some, what I said about McDermott, kind of making it a 4-on-5 defensively. He would be a guy you can just plug in and could play just as good defense in spots as Nikhil or Jaden. So I like that name. I'll give that one a 6.
A 6 on Dennis Schroeder. Yeah, I think, man, he is. I'm like a 5 on Dennis Schroeder. He can play. Like he would definitely be a rotation player. He can definitely hit some threes, but he's also a really streaky 3-point shooter. My biggest concern there would be, and if I'm missing something, let me know. He's actually under contract through next season at $13 million as well. And I don't know how they make that work and bring back Mike Conley even on like a lesser contract and avoid the second luxury tax apron. And by the way, I'm not like pocket protecting, with Alex Rodriguez and Mark. I'm like strategically and transactionally, you don't want to be in the second luxury tax apron because it limits the things you can do with roster moves. So I don't know that I see them putting $13 million of Dennis Schroeder on the books for next year. So for that reason, it's a 5 for me.
Should probably preface it just in general that the way I would approach this, and there's been rumors, right? They've talked about how maybe the Wolves want a backup point guard. I know like Jake Fisher of Yahoo has talked about that, and maybe they want to score. I'm sure, as Johnny K put it today in his article, that the Wolves will be aggressive in the buyout market, which is something that'll happen later this month. But I would be approaching this through my small brain of what can we do to keep the books. If we send out expiring contracts, we want to bring in someone who's on an expiring contract because this summer we're going to have lots of conversations about all these sorts of aprons. But I want Mike Conley back. So I would not want to move like this that's like, hey, maybe Schroeder's the starting point guard for Minnesota next year, when it's like you do everything you can to try to negotiate some sort of hometown discount or, Mike, this is the best team for you this summer. And in a summer where only 6 or 7 teams have cap space, and all those teams, most of those teams are like Charlotte, Detroit, the Spurs, not very good teams. So does Mike want to have to reinvent himself again this summer, or does he want to stay with familiarity, a coach that he loves, teammates that he loves, and a roster that's built to win now? So that would maybe lower me from a 6 to a 5, knowing that Schroeder, he's only 30, but $13 million guaranteed on the books next year is not something I'm ready to wrap my head around. So let's get someone else.
Okay. So another one from Johnny K here, The Athletic. Kyle Lowry. Now this would be, so he's with the Hornets right now, but he hasn't actually played a game with the Hornets, if I'm not mistaken, after the transaction from a couple weeks ago. 37 years old. Now this would be a buyout situation here because you're not, there's no way you could finagle a trade and absorb his it's a $29.6 million prorated, but like you couldn't match salaries on that. So
Right.
it'd be a buyout situation. But how about Kyle Lowry in the twilight of his career as kind of a secondary to Mike Conley? 1 to 10 scale.
Yeah, and again, the only concern I would have, well, two concerns is one, I've watched a couple of his Miami games, and it's not like the Miami Heat are the deepest roster in the league, and I know that they traded him to get Rozier, and that's an upgrade, but when Lowry was on the Miami Heat earlier this season, he was really not doing much. They're
like leaning on him for 30 minutes a night still, too. He's not a 30-minute player anymore.
Right. So he would, again, we're all kind of trying to find this little piece of the puzzle that's not going to be better than Mike, because you're probably not going to find an upgrade over Mike Conley, but can you find an upgrade over Jordan McLaughlin? I think Kyle Lowry would be that. Again, is Minnesota even a good fit for him in the buyout market? I would imagine, he played near Philadelphia when he went to college at Villanova, so the Sixers probably have a bigger hole at backup point guard, even with Pat Bev there and Maxey and stuff. So there's just other fits around the league that seem better for him. But I think what Johnny K was kind of putting in his article today is that the Wolves, and this is what you actually have heard from other people, is that they're very active, and whether it be a deal prior to the deadline, which is 48 hours from now, or something in the buyout market, they're going to try to find ways to add talent to this team. So I'm not a big Kyle Lowry fan. I'd probably put that at like a 3, just because I don't really see it. I would just trust, again, how many minutes can you get out of Mike? And I've really liked what Jordan McLaughlin has done coming off the bench. He just gets the system. He moves the ball. He's not so ball dominant. So it sounds crazy to say this, but is Kyle Lowry at this age that much better than Jordan McLaughlin? Especially when you have to consider a roster spot. And I don't know. So I would pass on that.
Yeah, the thing about McLaughlin, too, is small sample size, but he's been hitting some threes the last couple weeks, too.
How sustainable is that?
If he's hitting threes, I'll take him for 15 minutes a night if he can hit a 3,
And he's doing the anti-Kyle Anderson thing of, he misses some. He's not like a high-volume guy, but he knows, again, the Iowa Wolves syndrome, the Finch ball movement of if the ball moves enough on offense and you catch the ball in a spot where you're open to take a shot, he just lets it rip, and that, to me, is half the battle. Just that's what the offense is designed to do, is to get you that shot in that spot on the floor. So he takes them. He's been making them. I don't know how sustainable it will be come March, April, and May, but for now, if for a team that has limited assets, Phil, as we know, right, a couple second rounders, a couple young guys, and then expiring contracts, you have to be really strategic with where you improve your roster. And I think this roster needs just more pure shooting, bucket getters, movement shooters, that type of thing at like a 2-guard, 3 position. The backup point guard to me has to be someone who's going to move the needle, and I don't think Kyle Lowry moves the needle.
Okay, what about this backup point guard? This is from Hoops Hype. Now, I will say Doogie shot down part of this report on the Scoop session today emphatically, but Tyus Jones has drawn trade interest from the Magic, Spurs, Nets, Lakers, and Timberwolves. League sources have told Hoops Hype. The Wizards value Tyus as a potential piece going forward, so they'd like to keep him, and they're open to re-signing him in free agency this summer, but obviously, Tyus gets to decide where he plays. As recently reported by Hoops Hype, Washington would covet a future first-round pick to consider parting ways with Tyus Jones. Now, there was a report that the Wolves offered 4 second-round picks, but Doogie shot that down. Also, Tyus, in terms of salary matching and value, he's a $15 million, a $14 million chunk. So it just makes it a little bit tougher. But your thoughts on Tyus Jones, 1 to 10 scale?
Well, I think to your point, it was Matt Moore who reported that the Wolves had offered 4 second-round picks, and that was the day after Dane and I specifically said I think the Wolves only have 3 second-round picks that they can even offer. So kind of didn't pass the sniff test, and then Matt, who is really good at this, but he kind of walked that back and was like, actually, that I have confirmed that didn't happen. So, and Doogie is as plugged in as anyone, so he was very much out in front. I'm sure the Wolves would like Tyus, again, because he's a good player. And what is the price to get him? I've always thought it was a first-round pick, and that's kind of what the Wizards stance is. But if you can get him for a couple seconds, I just come back to this idea, Phil. Again, Mike Conley is such an important piece of this, and we'll get into that even more with some of the Finch stuff and all these things that happened over the weekend. But if you trade for Tyus, then you're going to have to pay Tyus. And I think Mike Conley is going to resign this summer because he's going to look at the market, look at the area and be like, my family loves it here. We could maybe call this home for like forever. I mean, they were going to do that in Utah. It's close to where he's from in Columbus, or where he played college ball. So I think they'll be able to find a way to get Mike back on a cheaper deal. I'm not talking like $3 million, but if you trade for Tyus and you give up assets and you only have a couple things in the cupboard, then you have to be like, are we going to re-sign Tyus? Yeah. And I think Tyus will have a more fitting market. I mean, this could be Tyus's one chance to really get paid, like a good contract. I mean, he would be a perfect fit starting alongside Jalen Suggs in Orlando, or to go play next to Wemby with the Spurs and his brother's down there. So he's the type of guy that with these bad teams having cap space this summer and having to spend it, he should go get a bag from one of those bad teams and try to elevate their play. I don't think the Wolves could re-sign him, and if you're not going to re-sign him, then I don't think it's worth, the reported 4 second-round picks, because that's every asset you have between now and 2029.
Yeah, so I mean, I think most, and this is why you got to be careful. Everything you just said too about, you're making a trade for a rent-a-player right now.
Yep.
I think that's what you're doing. Because if you look ahead to next year's cap situation, and Dane Moore does the best job of anyone covering this team of sort of going through the specific details and the weeds of where the Wolves are at cap-wise, tax-wise. But as I understand it, the projected NBA salary cap next year is $141 million. Mm-hmm. So it was initially going to be like 142, 143. It's settled in at $141 million. So 141 cap. Now the NBA, I think we do have some more casual Wolves fans or new Wolves fans that aren't immersed every day in the NBA's salary cap. Remember, you're a Vikings fan and you've caught Wolves fever. The NBA salary cap is so much different than the NFL salary cap. Uh-huh. Like the NFL salary cap is essentially a hard cap, but the player contracts are very manipulatable. You can take money from one year and shove the accounting into a future year. You can convert base salary to signing bonus and prorate over, like, there's all this stuff you need to manipulate contracts. And the NBA, the cap is soft and there's different levels of tax, but the actual player contracts tend to be really ironclad, unlike NFL player contracts. So it's kind of inverse. So the NBA salary cap next year is $141 million. The luxury tax line is $172 million. The first apron, so some penalties apply, at $179. The Wolves right now are at $185 million, tied up in 11 players next year. So they are $44 million over the cap, $13 million projected over the luxury tax line, $6 million projected over the first apron, and that doesn't include bringing back Mike Conley. Kyle Anderson is a free agent. Jordan McLaughlin is a free agent. And then so they're $5 million short of the second apron, which provides a bunch of different penalties and restrictions. So if you add $13 million of, who was the first player we talked about?
Dennis
Schroeder. Or if you're looking at, signing Tyus Jones, I mean, Tyus Jones is going to command, what, $20 million in free agency next year? I mean,
something like, I've always been a little aggressive. I just love getting these guys paid. Everyone that's listening to this should get all the money they can. But yeah, like maybe like 4 for 60 or something. So maybe like a 15 annual. Okay. But again, this is a good conversation because nothing has happened so far. I just checked X and there was no news to break. But the Wolves, as we've laid out on multitude of pods, is they don't have many assets and it's going to become more and more expensive. There will be conversations this summer about, do you make a big trade with a Carl or a Nas or a Gobert to try to loosen up some of those financial restrictions that you might be facing? But we are in a weird order of operations, to throw it back to, like, I don't know, was that math or chemistry, where we don't even, like, the ownership thing is still very much a thing, right? Like, Mark and Alex are all over the place now and they're hanging out with 50 Cent. But they haven't really gotten the keys yet, and we think that's going to happen later this spring. And then once they're in charge, and they're the ones that have to cut the checks on these luxury tax payments, we don't know. And I'm sure the front office is working with them to know and have a better idea, but I just am torn between, do you burn every remaining asset you have right now, like the Phoenix Suns have? They don't have any control over any pick, basically, between now and, like, when we all turn 50.
Yeah.
Do you want to do that for a player that's a rental? But I also see the other side of it, right? Purple Daily, win one before we die. Like, the Wolves have a window now to actually be a contender. Yeah. They have some things to work on, but do you also want to push your remaining chips in and make this your hand to try to, win it all? And I'm torn on that. And that's why I say if it's a needle mover, right? Like Tyus Jones probably moves the needle a little bit more. I could talk myself into it. A Kyle Lowry, I don't want to give up any assets for him. And like even a Dennis Schroeder, like I don't know if he moves the needle as much that I want to basically spend the rest of my limited budget on a guy like that.
I'm going to give you 4 other names that Hoops Hype has reported the Timberwolves are sniffing around on, kicking the tires on. You tell me if any of these 4 players are like a 6 or a 7 or above on a scale of 1 to 10 for you. And by the way, all 4 of these guys expiring contracts, and they make between like $8.5 and $10 million. So you wouldn't have to give up Kyle Anderson, say, to make a trade happen. You could get it done with like Shake Milton and Wendell Moore or whatever, some other combination. Royce O'Neal, Nets. Let's go DeLon Wright, Washington. Monte Morris, Detroit. And Alec Burks, also with Detroit right now.
Royce O'Neal, 10. I know
10.
I told you I wouldn't get above a 7.
10.
Again, not to
What
double
about
dip,
LeBron?
9.5. Just I don't want the cryptic tweets. I've enjoyed a drama-free season. No, the Royce O'Neal thing is perfect for a multitude of reasons. He's only like 30. He is an expiring contract. My preference for this team would just be another wing. So a guy that can shoot, a guy that can play a little defense. I don't want to say that Royce O'Neal is, dollar brand Jaden McDaniels, but he kind of fits that mold of if you lose Jaden, you can put Royce in to play defense, but also space the floor. Obviously, you'd have Kyle too, but he's not providing you any sort of floor spacing. And then Nikhil, as good as Nikhil has been, and he's been one of the most valuable players all season, he can't guard a level of wing that just has too much size for him. So, and kind of to top it all off, and then this shouldn't matter, but it kind of does, is Royce O'Neal played with Rudy. So Royce O'Neal has some experience of playing alongside Rudy Gobert. We've learned now that does nothing but help, kind of make everyone feel comfortable and understand how to speak French and to make Rudy work. So Royce O'Neal to me is a 10. The Monte Morris stuff, I think he's been tied to the team because of the Tim Conley factor. He started playing again, as we all know. He was banged up there with, I think, a hip or a hamstring or something. But he'd be good. I mean, he'd be a solid backup point guard off the bench and could play in spurts. I think he's a playoff player, and that's kind of what you're trying to figure out. Alec Burks to me, Monte Morris, I'd say like a 5. Alec Burks to me is like a 7.5.
Yeah, I think Alec Burks he's like an 8 for me.
Okay,
and played with Gobert like 5 years ago in Utah.
And again, that's stupid, but it probably matters.
No, it
You know what I mean?
does matter. He's a hard player if you've never played with him.
Yep.
Dude, it took half these guys a full year to figure out how to play with him.
Right. So that's another one. It's like that makes a little sense. He doesn't need the ball in his hands. Again, they're not going to bring back Jalen Noel, and they're probably not going to be able to trade for Malik Beasley, but that type of player to me is just what they lack. I love when Nikhil comes off the bench. I mean, I think Nikhil's shooting 110% since Christmas, but Kyle and Nas have their roles and their specialties, but there's not a lot of offensive punch, and I worry that if there's a night come April or May playoff time where the Wolves defense just hasn't traveled, they just don't have it that night, and they do need to outscore the opponent. Maybe it's the Phoenix Suns in Game 3 down in Phoenix. Can you just throw more offense out there to try to win that game and steal it? And Alec Burks would be another one. Who was the fourth? Morris, O'Neal, Burks, and then who was the fourth guy?
DeLon Wright, who's with Watt. He's been with like 6 different teams in 8 years.
Yeah, that was the guy that Dane mentioned last week on his pod that would just be like a perfect fit, like kind of another Nikhil, would bring more defense, proven guy, vet, been around the league. So
yeah,
you're kind of navigating now a pool of the same types of players. So if Tim Conley's familiar with them, again, Tim Conley was pretty spot on at last year's trade deadline. So whatever he ends up doing, even if it's nothing that exciting, I mean, you're looking around the league right now, it's never been this slow, 48 hours before the trade deadline. So whether it's clogged up or just teams don't have the assets to even try to make deals, it's going to be interesting. But all 4 of those guys would, in my mind, O'Neal, Morris, Burks, and Wright would play. In my mind, they would be part of an 8.5-man rotation come playoff time. So that would move the needle enough for me. But yeah, O'Neal and Burks would be the 2 I'd like the most.
So Alec Burks too. Here's another feather in his cap. This team needs someone that not every night, but that some nights can just go and get you like 20 or 25 points. That's not Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards. And Alec Burks for the last 4 years is shooting 41% on 3-pointers, averaging 6 attempts per game in a bench role, dude. Like he comes in, he plays like 20 minutes and still gets off like 5 or 6 threes at a 40% clip. And he has games, again, off the bench. Now it's Detroit and there's some garbage time involved here. So take
when
this with a grain
they tip the
of
ball,
salt.
it's garbage time over in Detroit.
Yep. But he has games where he's dropping 34 points on 17 shots in a win over Washington a couple weeks ago. 33 points with 7 made 3-pointers in a close loss to Milwaukee. That was actually 2 weeks ago. 27, 24, 21. So he's a guy that, if you traded for him tomorrow, 5 times between now and the end of the year, if you gave him 20 or 25 minutes, he might knock down 6 threes and carry you in a second half. So just that little shot of that microwave scoring option from 3 would be great.
And again, I thought what John wrote today in Athletic was a nice primer. That had some reporting in it too, but the kind of gives you a picture of what we talked about with Dane and I on Friday. The one thing that was like a new little anecdote that I had never thought of was when you're talking about DeLon Wrights and Monty Morris's and Tyus Jones. I think that when the playoffs come around, it's got to be as much Mike Conley as you can have. Like I'm not going to say he should lead the team in minutes, but damn near. But John added that kind of thing about how the Wolves would use this player to kind of ease Mike's burden between the All-Star break and the playoffs, right? So there's 20-some games after the All-Star break to the finish line. If you could find ways to have a point guard that could step into Mike's role to keep this thing humming a little bit, but Mike wouldn't have to play, that's another added value to whatever you try to do before Thursday. Is maybe you give Mike a little break between, now and April 15th so that come playoff time, that player that filled in for Mike is maybe not as valuable for the playoffs, but they're valuable for the stretch run.
Do you think there's also another is there another math equation here where maybe it's not a backup point guard per se that you bring in, but it's even if it's like a Royce O'Neal or I guess Alec Burks would fit this category too. It's just a better fit offensively for your second unit, so that when Jordan McLaughlin is out there, at least the second unit is putting up more points because he's got someone to pass to that can knock down a 3 in the corner, right? So the burden is off Conley in that, hey, when he's not on the court, whatever combination is out there is just a better offensive combination because you've got a 40% 3-point shooter in the corner now.
Yeah, and again, if Troy Brown's not going to be part of this rotation, and Troy Brown is clearly just a better player than Shake, the Shake Milton thing just hasn't worked, and I'll be shocked if he's on the team in 48 hours. The one thing this team just doesn't really have, because Jaden can be inconsistent. I think Jaden's shooting like 38% again from 3, but when you take the starters out of the picture and you bring in the bench, none of those guys are really scorers. Nikhil has been above and beyond what anyone could expect. Naz is a microwave scorer. He can get hot, but you don't have that pure scoring guard. And to me, and how I would build a roster, I want my team to look in the playoffs, I think those guys are important. Even if, you might come into a defensive slugfest that guy doesn't play, but I don't know, I think of the Suns or I think of like the Kings. There might be a time in Sacramento in a first-round playoff series, you just got to outscore them. I think Burks would be awesome at that. It would look different, right? It would look different than what we've kind of watched through the first 50-some games because it's mostly been leaning towards defensive presence on the court rather than offense. But just having that kind of, bullet in the chamber would be valuable. So a lot of interesting guys that are associated with the Wolves. And again, I know we're doing this Tuesday afternoon, but I'd be shocked, Phil, if they didn't do something by Thursday. Dude,
Chef Conley, he's whipping up a batch right now. He's just putting together some ingredients right now, doing some meal prep.
I still can't get over the fact that they made the trade they made last year. Like just to not only get not only get Mike Conley, who we all love, but to get Nikhil, who at the time was a throw-in and has now become. He just turned 25. He's like an integral part of this franchise's core, essentially. And then to get the 3 second-round picks and to somehow milk that, this whole deadline would just look so much different if you didn't get those picks because you would be like, we have like 1 second that we can offer up. So that Memphis second-round pick that they have this year, it's going to be like top 4 or 5 in the second round. It's really valuable because one thing I've been told and we've heard is that second-rounders now are really valuable because you're not beholden to the rookie scale. So you can kind of be, those Gupta specials with those deals. You can get a little more creative, and you have cost control. I mean, look at Leonard Miller. They have him on the books for the next 4 years at like $1 million a year.
Is there
awesome.
any player that we just talked about, or any player that we haven't, but that might be on their radar, that you would include Leonard Miller in a trade for? So like rental players that can help you win this year. Would you include Leonard Miller in any of these deals?
Nope.
If they said,
Next
you know
topic.
what, T-Wolves, hey, you guys can have Royce O'Neal. We'll take your Shake Milton contract, and we'll take a second-round pick, but we have 3 other offers on the table. We're going in a different direction unless you kick in Leonard Miller.
I told Dane last week that Leonard Miller was untouchable, and he looked at me like I had 6 eyes. And then I watched the Iowa Wolves over the weekend when Leonard Miller had a triple-double. Again, the G League stats are juiced. They're not playing a lot of defense down there in the first place, but even his defensive effort is abominable. I've watched enough G League stuff. I've talked to G League people, been to G League games. It's like I don't know who's to blame. I really don't. I don't know if they're just not emphasizing shutting down guys in the G League or what it is. But he had some passes in that triple-double performance that are pretty rare for a 20-year-old. And again, I'm just a risk-averse person in general. But knowing what Leonard Miller makes for the next 3 to 4 years and knowing what this team is going to face financially, I would put Leonard Miller in a deal, but it wouldn't be for any of the guys we just talked about. I need way more of a needle mover to do that, because I think at some point Leonard Miller is going to be a rotation player on this team and possibly a future starter.
So for LeBron, maybe for LeBron.
Yeah.
I don't know how we'd make the salary.
Leonard Miller and Mike Conley for D'Lo. Run it back.
Hey, before we get into the random wolf of the week, we'd like to offer you, Kyle, this space to do a victory lap. Chris Finch is going to be coaching in the All-Star game.
Happy for Chris Finch. I don't know. I'm glad I didn't do a podcast yesterday because it would have been just a little too petty. But I'm happy for Chris Finch because when we had Jim Peterson last Thursday, a lot of the feedback I got both in the comment section or people texting me and you was that Jim Pete is the best because he calls it like it is and he says what other people are afraid to say.
Yeah.
And Jim said Chris Finch, and Jim's been there forever. He is Minnesota Timberwolves, Mount Rushmore. That Chris Finch is the best coach this team has ever had. And that, RIP to the great, great, great Flip Saunders. But Jim was like, I know what Flip did in his record, and I worked with Flip, and Chris Finch is the best coach. Then the next day, I think Dane had Britt Robson on his podcast, and Britt's covered the team for 35 years. They've been in existence for 35 years. And Britt said, Chris Finch is the best coach this team has ever had.
Wow.
And
wow. I think I need to see one more playoff run before I say that. But those are two very highly respected, longtime Wolves opinions. So
and we every week bring up what Jake is doing over at House and Growls, and he might be the smartest person covering the team in that angle by breaking down play sets and stuff. And Jake's one of my good friends, and he's right on, that Spurs loss. That was an abomination of rotations, experiments, not running enough set plays and stuff after the game. So if you analyze your coach in any sport based on just the on-the-court stuff, the stuff you can see, the stuff you can pull data from, I respect that. I don't know if I agree, though. I don't know if that's the whole picture.
Not in this league. Yeah, there's the ego management department of being a coach in the NBA is 75% of it, I feel like. Don't you agree? Chemistry
might be low. I might be
90% of it. Yeah.
And again, by no means are you and I ever trying to be. I never want to be an insider for the young kids coming up. I think that's not fun. I don't want to be a reporter. But we know stuff, right? We have these people on. We're friends with them. And my thing has always been, you have no idea what Finch is like behind the scenes with these player relationships. And when they won, it got so bad after the Spurs thing, or they weren't really listening. I mean, it was bad. Let's not sugarcoat it. The Spurs game was embarrassing. The Hornets game was embarrassing. But it got so weird, and it's usually people on social that have players in their avatars, but that are like, has he lost the locker room? I don't know. Go watch the video after Finch clinched the All-Star game, because that didn't look like a locker room that he lost. It looked like every man in there would take a bullet for him. So then you see some of the quotes that came out about how Ant was like, he coaches his players. He's not like a coach who lets us off the hook or tries to sugarcoat stuff for us. He had that 60-minute film session where it sounds like, by all accounts, he kind of let his staff, but everyone just kind of lay into each other. And then they came out and played really well against the Rockets. Mike Conley had some really cool stuff about he doesn't back down from anybody. He's a guy that really challenges you, calls you out in front of everybody. To have a coach who can do that and also know the game the way he knows the game is a special kind of match. And then Ant topped it off after the Rockets game too, saying, Finchie's just the best. Gobert was like, he is maybe the best coach I've ever played for too. So it's not a victory lap because there are things he can do. There are things that he can get better at, and Jake points them out better than anyone. And if they don't work on that stuff collectively, they're going to get bounced earlier than we hope in the playoffs. But, man, he has the highest winning percentage in franchise history. I think they've made the playoffs in 2 years, like back-to-back years for the first time since, Kevin Garnett was here. 35-15 through 50 games. They finished with fewer than 35 total wins in 21 of the franchise's previous 34 seasons. Yeah. I am just coming at this as I've eaten ramen, the cheap stuff, not the cool restaurants that put an egg in it. I've eaten ramen for like so many years, 89-cent ramen. And now Chris Finch is like a nice, fresh Olive Garden. And I would like to go to Carbone one day. But, man, if you're going to complain about Olive Garden after eating fake noodles that cost less than a bottle of Diet Coke, I don't know what to tell you. And the player relations stuff, a year ago when this wasn't working, I'll end this rant, everyone wanted Quinn Snyder. Quinn Snyder, Coach Rudy Gobert, he can unlock him. This isn't working. Is Carl have one leg? Is he ever coming back? They got to replace Finch. Quinn Snyder's 32-39 coaching the Hawks. Okay? So he wasn't able to just fix it. Chris Finch has done, and again, if you want to fire Finch after, they're going to blow a game soon. They're going to lose one of those Blazers games, and I'm going to be a wreck. If you want to fire Finch after that and bring in someone else, what if Ant doesn't like that guy? What if Ant's like, no, I'm out. Like that Finchie was my guy. Finchie was like a father figure to me. He told me like it is, and we got this new coach. I don't love this. You didn't consult me. I want out. Every action has a reaction. So if you want to fire Finch after every bad loss, I get being frustrated, but man, think about all the other dynamics that happen behind the scenes that we try to bring up on these shows and we try to get Jim to talk about and Dane talks about. Like, there's levels to this. It's not just about who runs the best X's and O's in the league.
First of all, that was great, dude. That was some of your finest work in the year and a half we've been doing Flagrant Howls right there.
No,
that was a great victory lap. Great. Oh, wow, an encore. Oh, the audience wants more Kyle. No, I think, and you've perfectly illustrated, I think, the plight of NBA coaches, which is, and by the way, it's not like some of these other sports like baseball where there's 25 guys and there's NFL locker rooms have 53 guys in the regular season, 90 guys in the offseason. And, it's just like if one star player doesn't like another one on defense, who really cares? They don't really have to work together because the room is too big. In the NBA, you've got some of the highest paid athletes and people in the world, and egos come along with that. And the rooms are small, man. Like, it is 12 dudes on an active roster, 15 if you count Luka Garza on the end of the bench over there. So it is palpable in those rooms if one player can't get along with another player. Think about Jimmy Butler, Karl Anthony Towns for the last 6 months of that saga. So you're constantly trying to just manage the egos of 21, 22, 25-year-old guys who are making $40, $50, $60 million a year. And for the Wolves, it's even more of a high wire act because guess what? If you're the Lakers or you're the Miami Heat, they've shown for generations now, the Lakers for generations, the Heat for about the last quarter of a century, that they can kind of move on from a superstar and then they'll just stumble into another superstar at some point because it's Miami, it's the Lakers. Mm-hmm. There is a level of having to placate to Anthony Edwards, to Kevin Garnett back in the day, because you're not sure when you're going to get access to another player like that. So as a coach, you're trying to put together the X's and O's in a way that get Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns to coexist and thrive together on the court, which was an assignment a year and a half ago that almost everyone who covers the NBA on a national level wrote off as being impossible, right? From a tactical standpoint, forget about ego and all that stuff. From a tactical standpoint, getting those guys to play together for the requisite 25 minutes a night that they have to be on the court is not going to work. Well, he's made it work, dude. Statistically, plus 11 points per 100 possessions. And then Anthony Edwards, well, what's been the worry in these markets we're so paranoid in markets like this, especially Minneapolis, that the star player is going to leave us. They're going to go to Boston, just like David Ortiz and Kevin Garnett. They're going to leave us. And so you have to manage and make that player happy, Anthony Edwards. And he's done all of it, dude. Like, tactically, he's gotten the 2 7-footers to play together. And from an ego management standpoint and from a development standpoint, he's gotten Anthony Edwards to buy in. To this point, we'll see where this is at in like 2 years. But it's a really hard job, and he has nailed it for the last year and a half. Totally agree.
And again, I know it sounds like a rant. It's really difficult and frustrating to not be able to analyze your favorite team that you cover or you cheer for and know all the details. I get that. I think about that all the time with like the Vikings or whatever. You don't always know what's going on behind the scenes. But that player relationship stuff is way more important than the X's and O's. And if you disagree, I respect it again, but it's just like in 2024, this league is all about, can you connect with these players that, I mean, not to get on a tangent here, but Killian Hayes, who came out in the draft with Anthony Edwards, who has no clout and no ability to do really anything positive on a basketball court, was reported earlier this week that his team would like to seek out a trade. If Killian Hayes has a team, we're bleeped in the league, right? Like,
I saw, dude, there was a social media post talking about, who's going to win the Killian Hayes trade sweepstakes. What?
Everyone that doesn't trade for him is going to win
the sweepstakes,
right?
Yeah.
So you have to. So to my Quinn Snyder stuff, he was tasked with coming into a team that had win now players and Trae Young, and they had made the DeJounte Murray trade, and to try to kind of correct some of their behavior. Maybe you can get Trae to buy in and play a little more defense. He has not been able to do any of that stuff. They're 32 and 39. He has not been able to get through to those guys. And if this doesn't work, we will now know it's not because the experiment with the two bigs didn't work, right? Like Rudy Gobert is minted. He's a top 10 Timberwolves player of all time. That trade, no matter what they paid, worked. If this falls through and doesn't work, it's going to be because the young guys that they're betting on, that includes, someone I like Jaden, just weren't able to mature at a rapid enough pace. There are very few teams historically that contend that have players, best player, third best player, fourth best player, that are 22. They just don't do it. And those teams try to build, 8-9 year rebuilds until that player's 26, 27 years old. The Wolves are trying to do it now. And if it doesn't work, that's when Finch is going to probably be replaced, right? If they bow out 3 months from now in the first round, I don't know what Chris Finch's job security is like moving forward. But to think that they're going to let go of him, I mean, Jim said that too. I know Doogie said this when he does pods on Tuesday and Thursdays. Like, there's no one in the ownership that was like, oh, we got to fire Chris Finch because they lost to the Spurs. That's just it's ebbs and flows. If you acknowledge them, you have to respect them that, yeah, they let that one go. They got bullied by the Orlando Magic. Then they used it as a kind of a come to Jesus moment, had a big, long video session, and then they treated the Rockets like they were a JV team. So congrats to Chris Finch. I'm happy for him. Enjoy Indianapolis. I will not be watching.
And I think to sum it up, too, just two very well-deserving coaches of the All-Star teams in Chris Finch and Doc Rivers.
How about Doc Rivers?
Great job the last 4 days in Milwaukee.
How about Doc Rivers just constantly being like, I love to golf. I'm hanging out with Larry David. I'm doing Bill Simmons' podcast. Then he gets all this money thrown at him to go coach Giannis. And like a weekend, it was like, yeah, I don't want to go to that. It's like, I'm sorry
also,
that you have to work.
ESPN blew out, and I was fine with them making it. I love Jeff Van Gundy, but I also thought, my God, do you even like basketball anymore, guy? Like, Mark Jackson, Jeff Van Gundy got blown out for Doc Rivers, basically.
Yep.
And then Doc Rivers, as he does all the time, does the about face. So we don't even know who's going to do the NBA Finals now for ESPN. Hey, let's do a random Wolf of the Week here.
Let's do it.
Presented in part by our friends at First Equity Mortgage. So a few years ago, I had a great experience refinancing my home at the time with David over at First Equity Mortgage. 24 years in the market, Minnesota-based, and they pride themselves on supporting the community and treating every customer as a friend and neighbor. You're going to see David bouncing around as a 20-year season ticket holder for Timberwolves and Lynx games. Huge Timberwolves fan. And I was doing some counting a few weeks ago, thinking about First Equity. And I've had 20 coworkers and friends work with First Equity on either home loans or refis. So I don't know. We're like a roving gang of First Equity supporters here. So if you're interested in getting the same great experience, go to femort.com. That's femort.com or scorenorth.com, keyword David. Also, if you're looking to deep clean your home, okay, and be honest, when's the last time you really deep cleaned your carpets, your air ducts, okay? Yeah, that's what I thought. Disgusting. You filthy Timberwolves fans out there. Zero Res is here to help you. A 4.9 out of 5-star rating on Google, which is insane. 17,000 reviews of validation there. So they're offering the Score North special, which is 3 rooms, 0 resified, starting at just $119 and a free hallway this month, plus $75 off when you get your Air Ducts 0 res clean. That's 952-0res or 0resminnesota.com. Say you want that Score North special. Spell it forward or backwards, it spells the same. 0 res. Let's get our guy in here. Ross Brendel, producer extraordinaire, with the random wolf of the week. Roscoe, what's going on, man?
How you doing, boys? Good to see you both on a Tuesday for random wolf of the week.
Look how shaken Kyle looks right now. Just can't believe after a 4-0 start to the random wolf of the week.
Did you see that nervous sip of water he just took?
I just want fair. I just want you to be fair, just like the officials. I just want you to be fair. Ross.
6-5, boys. 6-5. It was 4-0 Kyle, and now Phil has just come flying back.
So, but I'm still losing. So Kyle still has, he has the 6-5 lead. And if we pull up the standings here, the last handful of random wolves are Sam Mitchell, Derek Rose, Robert Covington, Greg Smith, and Shane Heel. So yeah, Kyle has a 6-5 lead all time. I'm looking to tie the all-time series. Kyle looking to get his smile back, looking to change his face. And Ross is going to throw out a series of clues. We get up to 3 incorrect guesses each, 3 strikes each. If one of us hits a third strike, the other one wins automatically. We can shout out guesses whenever we think we know. No Googling. Those are the rules.
Here is your unofficial first clue. I don't think we're going to get too far into this one, so we'll see. We'll see how good I did with these clues. Okay. Your first clue for random wolf of the week. This random wolf of the week, gentlemen, has won an NBA championship. So just so you know, to be clear, that was not as a member of the Minnesota Timberwolves. Okay,
that was our follow-up.
Yep, okay,
yeah.
Just in case you guys didn't know. Okay, this random wolf of the week averaged 7.6 points per game during that NBA championship season.
Oh, so like this, a contributor, like a pretty solid contributor.
This random wolf of the week averaged 7.6 points per game during said season.
Do it.
He thinks.
Can I ask?
He thinks he knows.
Was it multiple championships or just one?
Here we go again. It was just one.
Just one championship.
Okay.
We'll see if that helps you or hurts you.
I have a guess.
Say it
already.
Is it Rasho Nesterovic?
It is not Rasho Nesterovic.
That was a heat check.
Guess.
That was a heat check. Right
this
there.
was the end of the podcast.
I was pulling up from the logo.
That was a heat check for sure. I was just ready to first of all, I had to remember that he played for the Wolves and then pick him out of a mental lineup, but that would have hurt me. Thank you,
Kyle
Ross,
was ready
no.
to throw his mic. He was ready. You could see it in his eyes. This random wolf of the week played for 5 different NBA franchises. 5 different NBA franchises. This might help you. This random wolf of the week was or is, we've debated how to frame this before, 6'5" tall.
Dude, we're narrowing it now.
This random wolf of the week was or currently is 6'5" tall.
We get 3 guesses.
3 guesses, yep.
This isn't right, but I got to start firing out guesses because I'm so petty.
I have one right on your
heels. He's so worried about you. He's so worried about you,
now
Phil.
I don't like it.
What do you got, Kyle? What do you got, Kyle?
He didn't average 7 points. Wayne Ellington?
That was my guess.
Wayne Ellington is not correct.
Okay. That was my I swear to God, that was my guess, dude.
Okay.
100%. Yeah.
Okay.
This random wolf of the week wore 2 different numbers in the National Basketball Association.
We're not going to get those numbers yet.
This random wolf of the week was an NBA All-Rookie first-team player. I'm already ecstatic that we made it through 6 of my 17 written out clues, and you guys have
it's funny
17. Oh my God,
you've narrowed it down so much because, think about how many different 6'5" players who averaged 8 points a game in a key season and won a championship. It's really
well. Let's see where we go from here. This random wolf of the week is currently in their early 50s.
Oh, this is my wheelhouse then.
I'm
You
dead.
guys may have been thinking too soon or too recent.
Oh, man. Okay. Oh, my God. A whole world of players has opened up here.
I've just been aged out.
This random Kyle, I believe
oh.
in you, Kyle. I believe in you, Kyle.
Did he win a title? Oh, my God. Sorry, keep going.
This random wolf of the week was born in California.
Anthony Peeler.
Anthony Peeler, good guess. Not correct.
Okay. Now we're cooking with gas. Let's go.
Gonna backdoor.
Yeah, Kyle's just hoping to run out the clock now. This random wolf of the week averaged 18.8 points per game in his time with the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Oh, dude.
This random wolf of the week averaged 18.8 points per game for the Timberwolves.
I'm so bad at this. Everyone listening has already gotten it. Antoine Walker.
Too short. Right?
Antoine Walker has already been used. He was our very first.
I'm so spooked right
Random
now.
You know
wolf
what,
of
though?
the
That doesn't count as a guess then. That doesn't count
No,
as a guess.
I'm ready to fire. Oh my,
So
You got
Kyle,
no. We already used him.
Kyle is so worried about Phil winning.
I'm disgusted.
And Phil now is taking such pity on Kyle, he's not even counting guesses. This is beautiful.
I would say if you guess someone that's already been used, like, yeah, we're not gonna play gotcha.
Okay,
here.
boys, we're going to turn a corner here. This random wolf of the week was a first-round pick in the NBA draft. This random wolf of the week was a first-round pick by the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Oh my God, dude.
This random wolf.
Well, you said 18.8 points a game as a wolf.
Yes, sir.
Oh my God.
This random wolf of the week played college basketball in Sin City.
Oh my! I'm trying to do math now.
now my brain is just. I hate that you're like, we're not going to make
so
it far
great.
down the guest list, and now we're
But they
guest
whiffed
14.
on a. They didn't even have first round picks during some of this period, but they did. They did during this period.
Maybe I was messing with you guys. Maybe I was just getting in your head about how hard today's one is. Okay, we're getting there now. We're on the back stretch here, boys. This random wolf of the week was traded by the Wolves to Portland.
Isaiah Ryder.
Kyle is back in
Dude,
the win
wow.
column.
That was really tough.
So easy in retrospect too. That's
no,
a great one.
Way to go, Kyle.
The draft pick thing.
What a
I mean,
title with the Lakers.
With
that
the Lakers, yep.
Drafted by the Wolves helped.
Nice
all
job,
rookie helped because that tells you he's a good player. You said 6'5", right, for height?
Yeah.
Because like I was thinking, Phil, you were probably thinking this too. Like I guess Christian Leitner. I don't know if he won a title, but it's like, well, it can't be
Too
him.
short. Yeah, he's too short.
I don't
Dude,
know.
I was trying to think of first round picks after KG, and I kept, but it was because mathematically I was like, okay, if they're in their, but what is early 50s? I guess he could be like 54.
Yeah, I was also had Pooh
Yeah.
Richardson on the mind because now he's in his 50s. Guard. I don't know if he won a title. To be honest with you, I didn't know Isaiah Ryder won a title, but I know he played at UNLV because there's only a handful of. I think him and Anthony Bennett played at UNLV. I should go look this up. And someone else.
Just a couple of quick notes. Couple of quick notes on my end. The algorithm has been very kind. It gave us 2 very obscure players in a row. Now the last 3 have been pretty well known. So
that's great. Yeah.
So don't poke fun at the algorithm. What the algorithm giveth, the algorithm also taketh.
Did you really think Wayne Ellington?
Yes.
Okay.
I was mad when you guessed him because I was like, I should have just shouted it out, and you're gonna get this point. But I was trying to. I was like letting you. I was yielding to you in the crosswalk there.
I respect that.
I didn't dig too deeply into this, but the list of players that have played for the Timberwolves that have won NBA championships, it really can't be all that big, can it? I mean, I really struggled to. Luke Longley won a handful. But
so Luke Longley was when I asked you multiple championships, I was going to guess Luke Longley. Did
Rasho would have won a couple with San Antonio, right? At least one, maybe two.
I think he
Right?
was on for sure one of those early 2000s title teams. Yeah, no,
Chauncey?
it's a fun game to play. We should look this up. How many Timberwolves players have won championships? And it's got to be someone who played for the Timberwolves. It can't be like Ray Allen, who was drafted.
Yeah.
Right.
Shameless plug for Purple Daily and Purple Access. Judd and I did our 5 favorite Minnesota Vikings to win Super Bowls elsewhere.
Like,
like
on the
that.
current team right now, or
Just in
there's
general, they played
like
for the
Stephon
Vikings.
Diggs.
Yeah, Brad Johnson played for the Vikings. Won a
Oh, I
Super
got
Bowl
it.
for Tampa Bay.
They've already won
Yep.
one in the past.
Yep.
Got it.
Jarek
Okay.
McKinnon played for the Vikings. Won a Super Bowl for Kansas City. We had some fun with that.
If you don't say that the player is in his 50s, I would have blown my guesses on. I was thinking JJ Barea. I was like, he's not 6'5", but like on a title team, and then also Corey Brewer because like drafted. He's not 50, but
Terry
the 50
Porter
thing-
was going to be one of mine too.
Oh, Terry Porter would have been a good one too. So I did not have it that Isaiah Ryder won a title. You said with the Lakers?
Yes, in 2001, I believe. Ryder's an interesting story because when he was when he was in a good spot, he was a good player.
Yep. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, he was a good player. Even if you didn't know his story and you looked at his career numbers, he had a heck of a career, but he probably left a lot of meat on the bone. But yeah, there you go.
There we go, dudes. All right, Kyle, congratulations, back on the board.
baby.
Confidence is back. And
Are you doing any more of these? I mean, I'm out. I'm going on PTO. Appreciate the time
You and
off,
I-
sir. But
You
what,
and I are both out on Thursday. We left it in Phil's hands on Thursday.
I think I'm going to try and corral Jim Pete for a little trade deadline recap episode if we can make it work timing wise. But yeah, we will be reacting, and we will if they do, and they will do something. We're gonna just throw your buds in, and we'll get you.
Sweet.
We'll get you on from the golf course
I appreciate
wherever
that.
you
Yeah,
are.
good.
The
They have
16th
a
at Waste Management.
nice winnable game tonight against the Bulls, and they play the Bucks, who are also beatable, and then a couple more games in Portland before the All-Star break really kicks off. So trade deadline should be fun. Tune in. I'm sure the Danes of the world and the Johns will have all the reporting, and then we'll talk about it later this week.
Amen. All right, it's your favorite Timberwolves lifestyle podcast, Flagrant Howls.